When 2024 started, we all crowned Max Verstappen a four-time world champion, and we also crowned Red Bull to be the constructors champion. But guess what? 2024 has been anything but that. And I have a question for you. Are Red Bull about to choke away not one, but two championships this season? We discuss.
Okay, Ammar, I'm going to hit you with a couple of quotes that come out this weekend. One from Christian Horner and one from Checo Perez. Chew on these for me. So the first one, this is Christian Horner via Automotor and Sport from Germany. In regards to Red Bull and their development trajectory, he said, "We traced the development history back, and it turned out that the first mistake we made was with an underbody upgrade in 2023 in Barcelona. That was also the Grand Prix from which Checo started to have problems with the car. We just didn't take it so seriously because Max kept winning." I just want to fact check that because a lot of people have said, Checo fell off a cliff earlier than that. Well, actually, the last time prior to Baku 2024 that Perez out-qualified Max Verstappen was actually in Miami 2023, 2 races before the fateful Barcelona race. After the Barcelona race, he went on that ridiculous run of not being able to get out of either quali 1 or quali 2, no matter what the track, weather conditions, tire temperature, whatever. He just couldn't get himself out of Q1 or Q2. So that much of what Christian Horner says is correct, I think. That's going to take me to quote number 2. Ready for this? Right. So this is Sergio Perez in Baku 2024. He says this: "It wasn't so obvious the issue with Max's driving style. Well, with my driving style, it all became a lot more apparent probably since race number 3 of the season." I think when he's talking about race number 3 of the season, he's talking about 2024. But he says the issues I was having, they just got worse and worse. And now Max seems to be finding similar issues. All right, Ammar, snap judgment, go.
A few thoughts, right? One, shame on the rest of the field for letting Red Bull get away with it, right? Because if this is actually true, then last year would have been up for grabs too, right? That's number one. Number two, this is why they held on to Checo Perez. Now you know why. Now you know why, because they clearly, at least whatever they were telling us on the outside, internally they'd identified certain issues that were causing Checo to fall off this cliff. And so we can put away all of our conspiracy theories about Checo just all of a sudden losing his mojo, or, as was sometime alluded by people within the team, his national origin being the cause of his downside and down failures. And I don't want to get too much into it because it kind of leads us down a different path. But this to me speaks about the issues that were going on well before what this current iteration of Red Bull looks like. And my question to you, Shez, my big thing from this is, how fixable is this actually? Because it doesn't sound like it's easily fixable. I mean, it might have been a slight issue that took them in the wrong direction, but we know that in Formula One, once you go down a certain path, it's hard to sort of backtrack and then get on the right path if you can even find one and then execute on it, right? I don't know. I'm left with more questions like how significant it is and what does this really mean for the rest of the season? Because it's not like they have a heck of a lot of time and resources to make that up.
Ammar, I think we're ignoring the elephant in the room.
I was trying not to go there, but okay.
We're going to go there because this is important, right? We do judgments all the time. We just didn't take it so seriously because Max kept winning. What the heck is this guy? He's like the
But that's what I'm saying. But don't you think there's an element of if Max is struggling now, Shez, had Ferrari been a little better last year and they were completely out of it, Mercedes were completely, it could have been different because it's all relative, no?
Yeah, that's not the elephant in the room. The elephant in the room for me is just how amazing is Max Verstappen? Like,
of course, yes. I mean, yes, it has been acknowledged.
The hell? He's basically been driving a tractor since Barcelona 2023,
oh, come on.
And he then won every race.
Yeah, but that's because that John Deere was better than the other John Deeres. That's why that was good. I mean, this is what I'm saying. Also, I should get this in there because
the actual level of that car is what Checo was able to do with it. Because once they've started to remedy the problems, as we're seeing, in Baku, he suddenly starts to perform again. But Max just drove around the problems anyway. Ammar, if you ever get the chance, or if you have already, read The Perfect Car. This is the book about John Barnard, who was technical director at Ferrari in the sort of late 80s, mid
Lived in
90s.
LA, lived in my backyard actually.
Yeah, that's right. It did. Yeah. So he said something about Michael Schumacher when he first turned up at Ferrari in 1996. Michael drove the 1995 car, which had basically been an absolute dog. Won one race in Sean Lacey's lucky hands in Canada. And Michael got in that car, drove it around, got out, had absolutely blitzed everybody else's time, and said to John Barnard, "Look, that car was awesome. If I had had that car in 1995, I would have won the championship in it." That is what Max Verstappen has basically done with the Red Bull since 2023 Barcelona. He's taken a car that shouldn't have been able to do anything, not just won a championship with it, but won nigh on every single race in that season. That's how good he is. Let me just read you another quote, right? This is brilliant. Right. So this is the Autosport driver rating for Max Verstappen in the Barcelona Spanish Grand Prix 2023, right? Listen to this. They said crushing in his domination, but 10s are for flawless drives. He got 9 out of 10, right? This wasn't so, and he picked up multiple track limits warnings after a handful of excursions, blah, 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 blah. Red Bull advantage was colossal, so simply did what came naturally and disappeared off into the distance. Just take that now with the knowledge of what Christian Horner's just told us, right? He drove off into the distance because that's what the car was capable of. Well, it clearly wasn't quite capable of that. He was compensating for some flaws in the car
Absolutely.
that they didn't even realize they had.
I don't know what the accurate way to describe it, but for me, it's 50-50, right? It's 50% in terms of the success that they had, right? It is Max Verstappen, because you're absolutely right. No one can take that away from him. The way he drove that car compared to his teammate, there is no question. But I do think 50% of it is on the field, because you're seeing what's happening right now. Now, even as great as Max is, he's barely P5 most of the time. He has to get lucky on certain days. So my point is, we can give Max all the credit in the world that he should, but the other teams should really be kicking themselves, because this could have been last year. This could have been last year. I'm just so we have two elephants in the room, right? If that's what you want to call it. Of course, Max is great. There's no arguing that. I mean,
I feel like we're not. I feel like the problem that's happened in the last 7 races is that he hasn't won. So everyone's kind of like the same,
because the competition's arrived. And Shez, can we talk about this though? Because your boy was there. No, in 2023, Adrian Newey is there. Are we going to give him any? Are we going to? Or are we just going to like?
I do want to talk about this, because I still think my theory about Adrian Newey leaving and that coincidence in Miami fit. Adrian Newey has 3 pillars to his success, right? The 3 things that he is able to combine that make him so good, right? It's the aero side of things, the mechanical side of things, but also the vehicle dynamic side of things. And the vehicle dynamic side of things is how he interacts with a driver, how he takes the feedback from a driver and shapes the car. Now, Adrian Newey was part of the technical team at Red Bull throughout 2023 when they were sitting there ignoring Checo and just focusing on Max. Because what else would you do if one of your drivers is winning races and the other one is failing to get out of Q1, Q2? You're not gonna, if you want to keep winning championships. And remember, Max Verstappen essentially won the Constructors' Championship on his own last year. So they didn't have to focus on Sergio Perez. I feel like Newey did his usual thing, used Max Verstappen as his muse, and just continued to develop the car around what Max needed and what was allowing him to do what he wanted. But then you get to Miami, Adrian Newey leaves. You still have all of the problems that you've had since Barcelona 2023. The team now want to try and work this out for themselves. Like, what the heck is going wrong? They don't have that joined up thinking that Newey has, where they can correct for things by taking feedback from the driver. So now, even though Max is telling them, look, the car isn't getting better, and he was doing that race after race after race, culminating in the rant fest that was Hungary 2024. Now they're having to be forced to listen to him, because he's now dropped off as well, and they don't have that kind of safety buffer where they can say, well, it doesn't matter that Perez is driving badly or getting poor results. We've got Max getting results. Now both of them are doing it. They have to take it seriously. And my take on what has happened is that they've done the same thing that everybody else has done, in that they've come with like floor updates, and they've added downforce, and they've kind of been complacent that the platform that Adrian Newey had created back in 2022 was still going to give them the incremental gains that they thought they were going to get. But everybody else has caught up with their mechanical platforms. So actually that isn't as advanced above everybody else as they thought it was. So they add downforce, they get bouncing, they get or they get balance issues. It's either bouncing or balance issues or both. That's what happens when you mess with the amount of downforce you're putting on the cars in 2024. And Red Bull are having that problem just as much as everybody else is. That's I think where they're having a problem. But they can't. Their driver now can't correct for those problems in the way that he was before, because he's just reached a critical mass. Well, that's a rant, wasn't it?
I mean, no, you're completely fine. I don't disagree with anything you say, but I want to sort of look at the larger picture of this, right? Because everything you said about Adrian Newey taking the car in a certain direction with Max, all of that makes sense. But guess what? They had no competition from anyone. So evidently they were going to hit this peak or this challenge or this U-turn, whatever you want to call it. They could have hit this sooner had there been competition. And so my point is, this is all relevant, right? So they benefited from the idea of getting ahead, getting so far ahead, and everyone else being so lost that it didn't matter at all, right? So all of these things were covered. And the fact that Max drove the car so well was slightly misleading, right? Deceiving.
Literally.
It literally is. So this is sort of, it comes back in circle, right? So now you can see when competition is caught up. And I think what they did this year, which is probably their miscalculation, is whatever is going on dysfunctionally behind, they should have figured out a way for Adrian Newey to stay on until the end of the year, because they really could have used him in this spot. That I agree with you. They let him go off really quickly and work on this project, and they still can. So I don't understand why they wouldn't leave him on there.
They don't want him to take. They don't want him to take.
Yeah, but there's nothing left. They're mere mortals now. But they don't intellectually have anything else that, you know. Where are they at now?
I don't know, man. If he finds specific solutions for the Red Bull, he can easily take those solutions that he's already found and
fair enough,
to another team.
But he's taking it to Aston Martin, so who cares? That's going to be a longer job. It's not going to Ferrari or Mercedes. Or McLaren. That's going to take some time.
Like you really underestimate what Aston Martin can do.
I really underestimate. Well, yeah, but it's going to take time. Is my point, and by then things will change again, right? So that's my point. You're going to run out the clock. They made the calculation that this year McLaren wouldn't figure it out, Ferrari wouldn't figure it out, Mercedes wouldn't figure it out. And what's happened is that's what's caught them napping, really. Because
I think they hadn't figured it out themselves, Ammar.
So they've always been mere mortals. Like they've always just been that.
Well, they were mere mortals. They're mere mortals
even
now.
With Newey.
They weren't when they had Adrian Newey. But just come back to that quote again. We traced the development history back, and it turned out. Right. So it's not that they knew from Barcelona 23 that they had a problem. It's that they've hit a snag now where the competition is caught up, and they have gone backwards and realized that's where the problem was. And they've realized it because Checo suddenly took a nosedive from taking pole.
But Newey was part of that, no? But Newey was part of that, no?
Yeah, but you understand my point about Max, right? Like Max has been so good. So good that he's managed to mask major issues with the car that if he hadn't been there, that car would not have won anything.
Or if they had competition, they would have not been anywhere, right? I mean, it's a bit of both, right?
No. We need to be clear about this, right? That What I'm saying is that car, its base level was at Checo's level, but Max was able to get
Of course.
to a
Sure.
point where it was winning every race. So
Yeah.
if Max hadn't been there and they'd stuck another
But
driver in,
Shez, my argument of Max winning every race is in part because he had no one else competing with him. If he
but he
has
would
what
have.
he's had this
Yeah,
for this
okay.
stretch, then it would be and I'm not, and I wouldn't take anything away from Max. But my point is, Adrian Newey is as culpable in this as anyone else. And I think, and
Let me
I
rephrase
wouldn't,
that though. Let me
huh?
rephrase that. The fact that I'm saying that the car was at Checo's level means that Checo had competition, right? He was out in Q1, Q2, most races, and was
Yes.
finishing 5th, 6th, right?
Yes.
In the same field that Max was racing against.
Correct.
So Max did have competition that would have been able to, if he had been driving at Checo's level and not been able to drive around the car.
I see what you're saying.
Competition.
I see what you're saying, but the gap was so wide, and this is a testament to Max that there's several exits between, right, where all of these other drivers slotted in with subpar cars, right, and whatever you want to call it at that point.
Correct.
Fair enough. I think it's there, but again, you could see how quickly this can go wrong, and I think Red Bull have just in some ways kind of got lucky, right? I mean, you do have to say that they kind of got lucky because no one else figured it out. They kind of got lucky because they've had Max, and so if I am Red Bull, I'm dearly hanging. Shez, can I take a quick sort of a sidetrack on this? This is totally reckless speculation. Another tangent, but it's related. I think the reason you're seeing Red Bull put this out is there are two reasons. One, they've definitely lost the constructors. There's no way they're coming back and winning that. They're probably not even going to finish second. I think that's not even going to work out. It's gonna get done pretty quickly. Number two, I think they're in real threat of losing the drivers' championship. But number three, I think they're putting this out because they want to hold Adrian Newey responsible for this. That's the only reason you kind of put it within his timeline. They want to try to get it back. And I know, and look, Red Bull are as petty as they come. We have just seen it over the course of this season and even before too, that they're putting it out there in the media just for this reason. They want to kind of pin this on Adrian Newey. And maybe to some extent, look, if you're going to give him credit for everything, you got to give him, some flack for that, right? And so, yeah, there's too many variables in the mix, right, to kind of be able to say this is absolutely how it kind of went. But
well, I mean, the other thing that you pointed to that I think we have to acknowledge now is that they didn't listen to Checo and they were happy to have a very clear number one, number two driver, but with such a wide gap. Yeah. And that perhaps they would have had an easier, more competitive car that would have been more capable of maintaining a position in the constructors if they had listened to Checo. Because invariably, Max would have still been able to drive the pants off it, and he still would have been able to come out ahead over Checo with a car that's a bit easier to drive. It's just that Checo would have been a bit more competitive too.
I've told you this before, right? When you start winning, egos come into the mix a little bit more. You kind of blind yourself a little bit. There's a bit of complacency. I'm not suggesting that they were 100% complacent, but there are enough elements of these right around. And then now you can see clearly they pinned their hopes on Max and they're like, bleep it. We're gonna blitz the field so far that it's not even gonna matter. And it didn't matter for the longest time. I mean, again,
but at some point it reaches a critical mass.
It reaches a critical mass, correct. And that's where they reach now. And they've arrived. Yeah. So and now and it doesn't look like they have a mix. And I think a lot of this when things are put in the press like this, Shez, to me it says they're already setting us up for what's coming, which is they're on the verge of losing both championships. They really are. If McLaren get their act together, I know we've all talked about should it be Lando's number one, blah, 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 all of those things. But if McLaren are smart enough and they can prioritize Lando, they can get both these championships done. This is probably their only time to do both championships. Like, who knows what next year looks like? Who knows what 26 looks like? They're smart because Red Bull are in serious danger. You only have to look at the fact that they're not bringing a special livery at Singapore for that. Like, that tells you everything you need to know. You just because that is the difference between Max coming P5 and P10, and in Singapore it's all up in the air, man. So there is no way you can put an Alpine in front of him. He may not be able to get by it. But still.
Yeah, but okay. Let's not get completely ahead of ourselves because I think Max
it's a lot more
a bad setup away from being competitive in Azerbaijan. And
what does that mean though? What does competitive really mean?
Well, Checo was probably going to finish second in that race.
But Max didn't look like he was going to be on it the
Yeah,
whole weekend.
because he had a
Like
poor. So they admitted they put a weird setup on Max's
designing
car.
the
So I wouldn't expect that that's going to be the pattern in the next few races. I think if they've got a flaw that is giving them a bit more drivability, it's not quite as understeery, it's got a better balance, then you'd expect that the person that's going to exploit that the best is still going to be Max over the next few races. But Singapore might not be that race because we know that Checo's pretty good round there. He's won it before, 22, I think he won it, didn't he? So
Singapore
yeah,
is
so
going to be pretty bad for them unless they get lucky because Mercedes will be in the
yeah,
mix, McLaren are going to be in the mix, and they're going to have six
Ferrari will
cars
definitely be
ahead.
there. Yeah.
So they're going to have to root for,
Yeah. But I've always said that this is always a rear guard campaign for Max at the moment. I still kind of want him to win it because, man, I just
I
can't
think it would be amazing to assess the championship if he wins it without winning a
yeah,
single race anymore
race.
because
Yeah,
we wouldn't be
yeah.
able to, because it doesn't look like there's a race win coming.
It would be the fulfillment of Fernando Alonso's
Correct.
2012 season. And I would be here for it because I think he absolutely deserves to win this title. Some of his drives have
Sure.
been incredible. Um, yeah, I just can't get
What's
behind
what's
Lando in the
what's a
same
more
way.
amazing
Sorry, Lando fans.
storyline? What's a more amazing storyline? Lando winning the championship or Max winning the championship without not winning a single race here on? I think he doesn't
Max.
even need to be on the podium if I'm correct.
No.
He could be
Yeah.
outside of there
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
So
Max winning the title without winning any further races, I think for me is the
that would
biggest
be
story
quite amazing.
because Lando's had the quickest car for the latter half of this season and
More
has
than that, yeah.
squandered it,
Yeah.
absolutely squandered it. So if he wins the championship, it's against the run of play for me. For me, that's what it means. But I've been pretty clear about that for a while. Anyway, that's what I think. So I think the biggest things to come out of this quote for me are that Max is unbelievably quick. This
Absolutely.
is that Checo was actually worth keeping around, and Red Bull probably should have listened to him a lot earlier. And third, that Red Bull are now basically where everybody else was about 6 months ago, having to try old floors, new floors, hybrids, who knows, to try and understand what their correlation issues are and how they can get around them. But what do you guys think? What is going on at Red Bull? Is it are you team Max is unbelievable, or are you team Red Bull have messed this up and it's all Adrian Newey's fault? Let us know in the comments. Um, we'll we'll read every comment and we'll reply to as many as we possibly can. Please like, please subscribe. If you're new here, doubly please subscribe. We do videos like this nearly every day, and we're doing more and more. See you
Yep.
later.
Later.